A while ago, I uploaded a short video of an ant simulation running in the browser. It was functional, but not very interesting. What I needed was some gamification, so that's what I did. Starting with collecting some ideas, I quickly came to the conclusion that a tower defense-like game would be quite well suited for the bases I had. So I opened up Blender and made a turret. Starting with a base I intended to use for other turrets as well, adding a small machine gun on top and adding some procedural materials gave a rather nice result. While having Blender open, I also created a better looking enemy, gave it some basic materials as well, added rigging and a walking animation. A smaller version of this is also going to be used as scouts that do not attack. After rendering all orientations and animation frames, I stitched them together into a single texture atlas for each sprite, and they were ready to be used in-game. I used lines to indicate the orientation and columns to represent the animation frame, but you can do this any way you like. The problem was I did not yet have the animation handling implemented in my engine, so that's what was up next. To do this, I simply used the SX and SY parameters in the canvas draw image function, setting the width and height to whatever a single texture size is. We can now relatively easily draw any single frame in our texture atlas depending on the time and the orientation of the sprite, without having to load too many texture files. Next was UI. I tried to push this as far back as I could, but now I just had to do it. To make it as simple as possible, I only used panels. These use a single small texture and can then scale up to any size I want without distortion. To achieve this, the corners are used as they are, while the edges and the middle are scaled to fit whatever sized box I want. This way you can have a diverse look while still only needing a few textures. The positioning system I implemented allowed me to parent panels to each other, as well as to make them float up, down, left and right inside, as well as centered on any axis. This, combined with an offset value, allows for simple setup to position each panel however I want inside another. The panels also needed a new clicking logic. Every click on the canvas now triggers a check to see which object on the screen that occupies this space has the highest Z value. Then a non-click function on that object is triggered. I could now quickly add a simple UI. After adding the UI, I started working on the code for the turrets to actually shoot. I used a very naive method of looping through every single enemy and checking the distance. If the enemy is in range, it is chosen as a potential target. Then, out of those, the enemy that needs the least rotation is chosen to be the next target. Another thing I did was add some sound to the game. Using the Web Audio API, I could easily add multiple preloaded sounds as audio objects. Each sound is loaded and handled by a single audio handler object, and is cloned and played whenever it is needed. To give the enemies a reason to walk towards the turrets and attack them, I replaced them returning when they found food, to them returning when they found a dead comrade. This led them to quickly find and eliminate any single targets. This did work quite nicely, so we started working on another turret, this time a big cannon. The idea with this was a slow shooting, splash damage type weapon. To choose which turret you want to build now, you just had to click on the corresponding image and then on the ground. After then also adding explosion effects I made with Blender and a smoke and fire simulation, I was ready for a bigger test to see if everything still works. To my surprise it did. However, the enemies had problems choosing a single target when fighting on multiple fronts. I didn't worry too much and got started working on the resource collection system. Once again using Blender, I quickly had a resource field. Adding a mining turret on top with materials and an animation took some time, but I was eventually happy with the result. Doing the same pre-rendering as before, I scattered 5 resource fields around the lower right hand corner as sprites. The on-click event now triggering the building of a miner whenever the miner was selected to be built. Each miner then produces 1 resource per second. With resources, a cost was also added to each building, and the panel system was updated to show health bars for each building. The next step did change the way the game was played quite dramatically. You now needed to supply power from a central base to each building in order for them to work. For this I needed 2 more models, the power pole and of course the main base. The base consists of a big turbine for power generation, a tank, and of course control station with a big server and an antenna to control your buildings. For the power pole I decided to go with a Tesla coil looking design. Adding the power system was quite simple. All buildings now have a radius in which they connect to power. Every time a new building is constructed or destroyed, the power for all buildings except for the base is set to false before looping through each building. If it is connected to a powered building, it gets powered as well. This loop is repeated until there is no further change in any of the buildings. Power poles and the base are the only buildings actually transporting power, so they got quite a large connecting radius, while others have a connecting radius of 0, and there's need to be inside another building's radius to receive power. The final touch I did was a UI to toggle indicating of power and shooting ranges of each turret. I am happy with the result for now, though I am still missing some game aspects like a mission system, or even actually winning or losing. I might add them in other features in the future, though I am concentrating on other projects for now to get my head free and find new ideas. If you have any other questions or want further details, feel free to ask them in the comments.